Hey guys, in this video I wanted to discuss a big mistake that I see lots of beginner lifters to early intermediate lifters make when they are starting training. And that is the whole idea of targeting weak points / constantly wanting to determine what their weak points are and then bringing them up. So the whole problem with this is that when you are a beginner lifter to an early intermediate, you kind of have all weak points. You're not exactly like super strong. You are still developing that base of strength and aesthetics that is going to propel you throughout the rest of your lifting career. So the whole concept of having a weak point implies that you have strong points. And I found out lots of times people that spend all this time trying to determine where they're weak and then think they need to specialize early on with bringing up their triceps or bringing up their back or whatever, typically leads to a lot of wheel spinning and then not as good of progress as they possibly could make. The whole idea here is called adaptive proclivity training. So what I mean by this is that if you're following a well-structured program for beginner to early and intermediate, which I would define as basically 0 to 5 years of training, or 0 to 6 even, is basically when you're training everything evenly, like you should not be doing any specialization phases early on in your training career. There's no reason to. You're going to be shortchanging your progress. But when you're training everything evenly, you're going to notice that you're going to have some muscle groups that respond better to training and that grow better or are genetically stronger. In my case, something that I noticed very early on was I had a very strong chest. I had a very strong back. I had very strong hamstrings. And those kind of just kept getting stronger. Now, for some people, they'll find that their triceps are super strong, whatever. You can really pick any muscle group. The whole big thing here is that if you spend all of your time trying to decide, let's say that after time you have determined, okay, these are really strong for me, what lots of people fall into the trap of is thinking that they therefore need to spend all this time obsessing about bringing up their weaker body parts. So this is not the best way to approach training periodization in the long term. The reason why is because when you're earlier on in your training career, we kind of know that as you kind of go along with the training, let's say that, this is the time, like this is the x-axis, this is time, or like the amount of gains is the y. Let's say you're going over time, this is kind of how gains look. So the longer that you train, the harder it is for you to make progress. So if you spend time trying to bring up a self-proclaimed weak point or something that you have to determine to in those earlier stages of training, you will be doing that at the expense of making your genetic gifts the strongest and the biggest they possibly can be. And because the reason why this is important to just understand, for me to just emphasize the importance of, is your strengths are what will make you strong. They are what will make your physique look impressive. And you want to spend time developing those strengths. So specializing too early is a big mistake. Now, when can you think about specializing? Once you get into that late intermediate to more advanced stage, so 6+ years into training, when you kind of notice, okay, my weaker back is holding me back on my deadlifts. My legs are so much stronger because they're my strong point compared to my back. Then because I've gotten to this point where I actually am strong, I need to actually specialize on this weaker muscle group and bring it up. But it's also important to remember that your weaker muscle groups will never be as strong as your genetic gifts. So as long as your back is strong enough to, lift the loads on deadlift that your super strong quads, glutes, hamstrings can, that's not going to hold you back. Limiting factors will limit you only as much as they cannot assist the prime movement or your actual strengths. So by identifying your strengths early on in training and capitalizing on them, and spending the majority of your early years developing them to as much as you possibly can, and then only after you kind of more max them out to the point where you're really noticing, okay, I'm having this really big weakness and it's really holding me back in my training as you get to late intermediate to advanced stages, that's when the specialization is appropriate. But before that, like, it just doesn't really make that much sense. And something that is important to just emphasize here is that people like to think that we need to be perfectly balanced, and that everybody needs to be perfectly balanced. And the reality is that nobody is perfectly balanced. We all have certain muscular strengths. We all have weaknesses. We're not perfectly symmetrical. One arm is probably going to be a little bit bigger than the other arm. That's okay. The real key here is stop focusing on what you're bad at or what you're less good at, and focus on improving to the best extent what you're best at. You know, that's a big reason why when people ask me, like, Adam, like, do you want to do like bodybuilding? My answer is like, not really. Like, I like lifting weights, I like getting a pump, I like building muscle. I think it's cool seeing these changes, but it's not my adaptive proclivity. It's not my genetic gift. Like, strength is my gift. I'm going to play towards that strength and make it as strong as I possibly can. So find out what you're really good at, find out what your strengths are, make those the best that you possibly can, and then later on, when it's appropriate, you can specialize, because again, your strengths are what are going to propel you the most in your training and in your physique pursuits, athletic pursuits, etc. So that's just my insight for today. Hope that you guys found this helpful. If you guys did like the video, make sure to like it, like, comment, share, subscribe. If you guys are interested in programs or coaching, links are down below. Follow me on Instagram, Adam D. Peeler, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Later.